Hello, I'm Paul Chek. Our question for today is, are you stuck in Flatland? You may not be familiar with the term Flatland. It may have originated from Ken Wilber himself. I'm not sure. I know he uses it and describes it quite in detail in his work, but it is a legitimate, shall we say, issue or state that people in large numbers are sort of stuck in today. So let me give you a description, my own description of what Flatland is, in case you're not sure if you're stuck in Flatland. Flatland, feeling that the soul or consciousness is caught up in the mundane experience of routines and or procedures that don't nourish or inspire the growth of the whole person. So let's do that again just to really drive that home. Flatland, feeling that the soul or the consciousness within you is caught up in the mundane experience of routines and or procedures that don't nourish or inspire the growth of the whole person that you are. Now, if you think about that, that's probably a fairly obvious description or context that you can put the concept of Flatland into. Let's look at some of the symptoms of being in Flatland, which I will say as a preface to what's to come means quite often we're doing what we think we've got to do, but not listening to our heart or our inner feelings, and often making excuses about why we have to do the things that we think we have to do, which creates some interesting problems. So here's some of the symptoms. Boredom. Boredom with your life, with your partner, boredom with work, boredom with body challenges or neurosis, constantly having to focus on your body. So for example, it's more so with women, but when women reach, get into their 40s, their boobs start to drop a little bit, their faces start to age, their butts don't hold up so well, they often, get busy in life and aren't nearly as athletic as they once were. So when they look in the mirror, they see an aging woman, and just like a man's strength gives him a sense of youth and a sense of usefulness and courage and confidence in himself, a woman's beauty provides very much that same thing. So if a woman reaches the point where she feels like she's forever chasing after her body, seems like boobs are lifted, butts, liposuction, it can get to the point where a person realizes they can't win the battle, and then when you don't have the energy to hold up the face anymore, and you don't go within to deal with the other half of you that is perpetually and permanently beautiful, then you get stuck in Flatland, as an example. Now with men, it's often a perpetual drive to maintain teenage and young man youth, where the women resort to their things, men resort largely to steroids, also to plastic surgery, and their own forms of shortcuts, but often what you end up with is a 19-year-old wearing a 50-year-old body, doing irrational things, called a midlife crisis. So we have boredom with life, boredom with partner, boredom with work, boredom with body, boredom with sex is very, very common, particularly in relationships that have been going on more than about 7 years. Boredom with money, particularly chasing money. Boredom with issues of power, such as politics, governmental control, constantly dealing with regulatory organizations that are trying to control whether you can eat organic food or what you can do with your own child, what you have to inject or not inject. That can get to be boring. And then boredom with issues of control, such as religious ideologies or dogmas that can become paradoxically exhausting, yet at the same time very entangling and entrapping. So a person can feel trapped between maintaining family bonds, bonds with friends, and even bonds with the social group of the church, but on the inside feel that they don't agree with the concepts or the philosophy, or they're having a burning desire to read other materials, but something in them feels guilty. That can wear you out, and your life can go very flat if you don't follow the instincts of the soul or consciousness itself. So some of the things that happen are anxiety. Largely in psychology, anxiety correlates most commonly with fear of the future. What's going to happen? If you're anxious about driving your car, it might be because you're afraid someone's going to crash into you. If you're anxious about giving a talk in public, it's usually because you're fearful that someone's going to criticize you. So anxiety usually means you're projecting yourself into the future and not being present. Depression is the same sort of phenomenon but going backwards. So people that are depressed typically believe that yesterday equals tomorrow, which is a very classic description of Flatland. Yesterday equals tomorrow. So we have anxiety, we got depression, and then these two, usually if anxiety is not dealt with, it burns the system out and leads to depression, and if depression is not effectively dealt with, it leads to apathy. Apathy, in my opinion, is the functional antagonist of love. Most people think hate is. To hate someone, you have to still love them because you have to keep them inside of you to hate them. You actually have to project your own energy at the intensity that you want them to feel bad. So paradoxically, you eat the poison and hope the other person dies. So to hate someone is to stay very connected, but to be apathetic means to disconnect yourself from or to not care, to literally not care. And we have quite a high level of apathy in the world right now with regard to some of the major issues facing the world, which I don't have time to go into, but I think if you put two common sense together, you'll know what I'm talking about. And then the drain of all this, the perpetual drain of all this, and this apathetic state or flatland state leads one to not really participate fully in caring for themselves because they tend to give up both on themselves and on systems and often even people or groups. So illness is a common symptom of not engaging with your own spirit. Gossiping is often a way of projecting your own pain onto other people, but still maintaining the position of a child, because if you can criticize somebody in their absence, it makes you feel powerful. But usually the reason you're trying to do that is because somehow you don't have your own sense of fulfillment or your own sense of exploration or connection to love, beauty, and joy. So when we see people that do, gossip is often our own pain being projected at that person without realizing what we're really doing. So it's projecting negative energy, which produces more negative energy. Rebellion is an often common reaction to feeling in flatland, especially with younger people, because they have some energy in them to get irritated and pissed off and want to do something about it. And sometimes anger can be healthy, right? If you're getting mugged, it might be there might be a real functional place for being angry enough, if not just to run like hell. So rebellion often leads to cheating systems and entanglement or extrication. So when people become rebellious, for example, if you're rebellious that there's actually no law that says you have to pay federal taxes. If you watch the documentary Zeitgeist, the first of the three, you'll find out some interesting things about tax laws. So some people go into rebellion, which is cool, and I'm all for rebelling, but they also may have to find themselves dealing with the IRA, like I have had to deal with the IRA, and I can tell you, you need a lot of rebellious power to override the IRA as an individual. So what you see is that there's a tendency to rebel, and one of the ways people rebel is to cheat systems, not pay taxes, ignore laws in various areas, cheat in relationships, and wear masks. So rebellion can come out sideways all over the place, and it often leads to the recreational use of potentially addictive drugs that lead to, shall we say, numbing the pain of unsuccessful rebellion, I would say. So there's a real issue there. So flatland, as you can see, is something that we can get caught up into pretty heavy, and it produces a lot of symptoms. And if you look at the symptoms and then think of how much money is being spent on drugs to treat them and how perpetually flat a person's life goes if they stay in that mode, it is a pretty significant issue today. So now what I'd like to do is take a moment to use Ken Wilber's Four Quadrant model of how consciousness or spirit manifests itself so that we can understand the deeper nature of Flatland, and I will conclude with some tips for you. So here is Ken Wilber's Four Quadrant model, which I'll explain. I've drawn the diagram of a heart in here because really the heart is the home of the soul, the consciousness within us. When we're living, the higher we go into our consciousness through any spiritual practice, the more aware we are of the ultimate foundation of life, reality, and relationship in love. So the heart here is going to serve a key signifier. So if we look at these four quadrants, that spirit, the dotted circle means pure potential, unconditional love, God in all caps, capital G, capital O, capital D, the absolute, that which is transcendent of any relative experience such as you, me, hot, cold, or even subject, object, or I and thou. Therefore, the Buddhists would call that the ground of being. Soul is what we call the consciousness of that which is behind the universe as it exists within us as an individual. So for our psychological, emotional, physical, and mental self to be healthy, we need to engage in these four quadrants. Up in the upper left, you have the personal interior. Lower left, collective interior. Upper right, personal exterior. Lower right, collective exterior. Let me explain that. I have given you some questions here. So your personal interior is answered by the question, I am, or who am I? I am as a question, or who am I? And meditating on that. When you're asking that question, you'll quickly find yourself going way beyond the body if you keep asking the question, and we don't have time to go all the way through it, but I have a little tip for you over there. So this is the spirit of you. This is the subtle. This is thoughts, emotions, feelings, things that cannot be weighed or measured. On the right hand, we have the personal exterior, which relates to I do. So here, I am becomes I do. So everything in the personal exterior is physical, objective. It relates to numbers, things you can weigh and measure. So here you have behavior, but you also have up here everything in the collective exterior, or the personal exterior, goes all the way down to brain science, imaging. If you can see a brain scan, an electroencephalogram, an electroencardiogram, electromyogram, all of those things are actually showing the activity of and the measurement of what's emanating from here. For example, if I have you on a dynamic MRI watching your brain activity, all I got to do is show you a picture of someone having passionate sex, and what they measure over here will change significantly. And if I show you a picture of someone being physically abused or tortured, then everything they measure over here changes significantly. But if you didn't have this perceiving the image, there would be nothing to measure over here. You'd just be like an idle machine. So this is the part of you that can't be measured, and that's what's so exciting about spirituality. It's the study of what's causing all this to happen, where everything else is measuring what's already happened. So it leaves you thinking, for example, if you live over here, then the earth is a rock. The cosmos is made of rocks that somehow manifested this magical mystery of human life and everything else. Amazing. Okay? Smart rocks. So then we go over here, collective interior, I share. So here I am, I do, I share. This is the home of we. This is the home of family relationships, friendly relationships, social relationships, cultural relationships, tribal relationships. This is where people get together to interact with each other, which makes love very viable. It's easier to feel love flow between two people than it is to feel love within yourself until you grow spiritually enough to realize cultivating love in yourself first is really the requisite to truly feeling the love in the other person. But here's where relationships are. So here I associate this with the concept of agape love, which means to share the greater love, the greatest is unconditional, but to share that greater love by relating to and caring for all life, caring for the planet, loving the trees, loving the ocean, loving the fish, and loving each other. This is related to eros, or to the transcendent. So those that believe they're going to leave the planet and go to heaven, and that the planet is just going to be a wasteland or a place where everybody burns in hell, they're, shall we say, have a unilateral worship of eros, sometimes referred to as the ascender. God is up there, not down here. So this is, interestingly, eros is the force that pulls us up to look beyond our material confines and beyond our body. But you can get trapped in believing that everything down here is unreal. But this is where you make love. This is where you hug, you kiss, you dance, you sing, you party, and you watch the Super Bowl with your buddies. If this becomes too dominant and you don't look up, then you can actually fall into the trap of never really asking the question, who am I and what am I and what's making all this stuff dance? Where did the, shall we say, the idea come from? So we need to have a balance of these streams of the transcendent eros and the descending. You could say that the earth and relationships is where God experiences itself, and you can say eros is where God, shall we say, expands to pure potential. So over here we have the identification, the I do. Here we have the I am, here I share, and here I use collective exterior. So this relates to structures, systems, structures which have to do with laws and rules or systems of directing energy. So if you're using the internet, you're out in here. There's a system that directs energy. If you're driving on the road, you got to follow the rules of the road. If you work for a company like UPS, you have to follow their policies and procedures and their ethical codes, etc. So all systems and structures are here. So imagine for 2 seconds here, if you got rid of all the systems and structures in the world, we would have no houses to live in, we'd have no sewer systems, we'd have no food delivery systems, we have no educational systems, no communication systems. So you can see that this outer element has been around as long as we've been building shelters for ourselves and hunting, because those are things outside of us. Here we can see that we've always done things. Here we can see that we've always needed each other to learn and grow. You can learn a lot of things from an Eskimo that you can't learn from a basketball player. You can learn a lot of things from a basketball player that you can't learn from a football player. So there you go. We need each other, and this is, of course, the central axis of all the experience that you have. So here we have the I, here we have the we, and Ken Wilber refers to this as the it side of things because you can weigh and measure its. Now we want to remember that the Aboriginals did the most amazing job of telling us the truth of how eros meets agape when they said eternity, eros, is physicalized, becomes physical as place. Where are you? Who are you? This is my body. This is how much it weighs. You're sitting in the chair. That's your place. I can't sit in your place. So what you see is that eternity, that which cannot be measured or known, that's what the dotted circle means, becomes physicalized, or you could say spiritualized, transforms into form to become place. So this comes from Voices of the First Day, a beautiful book by Robert Lawler. So now let's look at some of the things we can do to get out of Flatland. Number one, have a dream. If you have a dream, then you want to use your imagination. You want to use active imagination, which is to take a concept, hold that image in your mind, and then have a relationship with it and allow it to communicate to you. Many scientists do this. Carl Jung was a pioneer of this technique. And then meditation. If you don't have a dream, then you need to be more imaginative, and you need to, or you have an opportunity to engage in active imagination so that all the things around you can become capable of moving through you. So for example, you can have a relationship with a tree spirit, and the tree spirit can become real inside of you, so now you're using active imagination to communicate to the tree, but there's something more than just the tree's body. Meditation is a process whereby we start off in the gross body. Here I am talking to you. Then we try to rise above the gross into the subtle, the world of dreaming and thinking and feeling. And then if we meditate deeply enough, we go into the causal, where there is no existence of shape or form, but somehow there's a witness. Then we rise up into the witness, and the further we go into the witness, the more we realize there's no thing there, and we're right back to soul. Except now, when you get there, soul at the causal level doesn't mean my soul, it means world soul or cosmic soul, and you come to this most amazing realization that what you are is actually what everybody else is. You are a unique expression of everyone else, they're a unique expression of you, and what we call spirit or God or the divine is actually manifesting as that which is looking through all eyes and experiencing all things at once, which makes life more exciting, and it certainly inspires love, because once you get there, you know what you're loving. Yeah, man, it's very good. Okay? So, if you want to learn some meditations to teach you how to start climbing that ladder, which we teach in the HLC training program, my Dr. Quiet audio program has 7 meditations for people with busy minds, or what I call monkey minds, or people that have a hard time meditating. So that's a great start. My book, The Last 4 Doctors You'll Ever Need, which is an ebook, multimedia ebook, teaches you how to do breathing squats, toning, and a number of other varieties, of which this audio, Dr. Quiet audio, is an expansion on. So you start with the 4 Doctors ebook, and the audio expansion gives you 7 other techniques. How to eat, move, and be healthy is very important, because it teaches you how to identify where you're under stress, which systems of your body are backed up, and what you need to do to bring yourself to baseline healthy balance, which is really, really important, because our second step is we have to balance ourselves. Our consciousness, if we're out of balance within ourselves, our 4 doctors are out of balance down here, then we run into trouble, because we're never really dealing with reality as it is. Being out of balance is kind of like having mud on your glasses. You can never really see what's right in front of you. So to the degree we're out of balance with ourselves, we bring that imbalance to any we relationship, and it represents the things that we're relating to, such as going to a party, we got to go to a house, sharing gifts, whatever. So we have to balance ourselves within ourselves, which balances ourselves within relationships, and then we get a more balanced use of all the things called its, such as gasoline, commercial products, water bottles full of, with plastic and poisoning the planet. So we learn how to manage our use of its. If you're out of balance here, your tendency is to try to find salvation over here and give yourself temporary happiness. But this just consumes more and more of the world and leaves the world in more and more trouble. 3, we got to make effective choices, and we have to choose the choices to balance ourselves that are dream affirmative, and we teach you all about how to do that in HLC 1. When it comes to the 4 doctors, the archer is the one that's making choices, or the ego, or the executor, by having a clear definition of what your dream is, which is happy making. What are my values? What are my feelings? What do I want more of, and what do I need to manage better? So happiness is being clear on what makes you happy, and then movement is putting that into action, but making sure that you get adequate pumping and adequate play in your life, not just more schedule, more responsibility, or you'll burn out. Pumping is very important to cleaning up and detoxifying yourself through proper diet and adequate hydration with quality water, because if you're dirty inside, then you're always out of balance, and you can't access your consciousness fully, because you're looking into a dirty mirror of self, so to speak. And then, of course, we have to rest effectively. So we always want to remember that here we have, shall we say, the illogical irrational. Love's not a rational thing, but it draws us into relationship with self and other. And here we have the rational, the things that I do and the systems that I use. So if we fall into the trap of identifying ourselves with the things we do and the systems we use, then we lose touch with the love moving through us that draws us into relationship with others, and we get caught in flatland. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on Flatland. Thank you for joining me today. Check into my resources. Love to see you at HLC1 so we can all get out of Flatland together and take as many people with us as want to be happy. See you next time.